Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to Counselor's Couch 101. And you know what? Just call me Jim. I tell people that, they say they call me doctor, they call me counselor, they call me all kinds of stuff. I say, look, just call me Jim. It's just Jim and whoever else. Jim and Susan, Jim and John, Jim and Mike, whatever, right? Just call me Jim. Anyway, things have been happening lately. Had a big gathering in the country via social media over a big event that they had on a football field. We're not going to get into that except for the halftime show itself. Um, but let me back up. Last week, I heard that Burt Bacharach passed away. I think he was 94. I had no idea that he was that far along and that he had been that successful and had such a lengthy life. But because of that, I saw a link to the Burt Bacharach songbook, right? And on a whim, I just pushed the button and started listening to the songs, remembering all the stuff that this guy came up with. And the thing that struck me the most was the quality of the messages involved, right? All of his songs had positive messages, and they were about getting along with people and about being a positive force in the world, having good relationship. And he's talking about peace. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. That's the only thing there's just too little of. And that was kind of like the theme in a lot of the stuff that he came up with. And he really wrote about, of course, he wasn't writing the lyrics. I have to admit that. I believe Hal David wrote the lyrics for all those the songs that were so very popular back in the day. But Burt Bacharach put this really lush music behind it, pretty harmonies, wonderful rhythms, right? Great melodies, and then he'd find great performers to record these songs that he'd come up with, and great arrangements behind them and all that. It was really a kind of a romantic music, and I mean romantic in the traditional sense, not in the, you know, the love books, not in that kind of a sense, but in the traditional sense, right? Is that have a positive outlook on the world and all that. And a lot of things that happen in life are reflected in the culture by the music, and maybe the music sets the tone for the culture. But at any rate, a lot of time had passed with a lot of negative messages being pumped into the young people. And I talk with young people, and they have such cynical attitudes, and they have such poor outlook for their futures. And a lot of kids are like, they don't know what it's all about. They don't think they should be trying to accomplish anything because it's not possible to accomplish anything. And I think that's really, really sad, because the world really is open to those who want to go out and live life and to do things and be creative and to contribute positively to the culture and to the world at large. But we can't do it with negative attitudes. And I see a lot of that stuff. I mean, there are folks walking around who are billionaires having done so-called recordings that I've never heard of and never listened to, because the stuff is just so negative. It's so anti-human. It's so anti-relationship that I'm just not interested in it. I have been criticized left and right about not being accepting of the modern music and how wonderful it is and all that. And I say, okay, well, I don't know what's going on now as far as what the titles are of the types of things being recorded and being called music. But there was a thing called rap. And I remember the only thing that rap had going on, I'm talking about music now, not the words, but the music itself. The only thing rap had going on, as far as I could tell, was rhythm, all these kinds of pulsating rhythms and people that got into. And I could see the allure of it, right? It's kind of captivating to get into it and move your body to that kind of rhythm, and etc. But I remember back in the day studying in school, we were told and taught that there were 7 elements to music, 7 elements to music. And it seemed to me, to my ear, that all rap was doing was using one, which was rhythm. Now, I know people are going to argue with me, and that's fine. People have given me examples of rap, you know, um, melted into other kinds of music with melodies and chords in the background and all that. And I say, okay, fine, I get it. Um, and some of it's kind of nice. But overall, a lot of the messages that we get in the so-called popular culture of music is negative. And that's disturbing because of the effect it's having on children. So I watched this event on a football field the other day in the middle of the particular game that was being played. And to me, I'm sorry, I didn't hear anything in there that I thought was uplifting and making people want to go out and be a better person in life and all that. And to me, it all sounds kind of, not just that, but a lot of the things sounds kind of selfish and self-serving. And the types of things that people chase after pursuing that stuff, it isn't valuable and it doesn't last, right? And it just ends up in making people unhappy. So anyway, to get back to the point, I suppose that's the point, is that once upon a time, music had a positive impact on the people that listened to it. There was one comment I read under a Burt Bacharach, a post online and social media, and the person said, I miss the music of my generation. And I thought that said it kind of all. It was a kinder, kind of a gentler world. Didn't some president say that once? People tried to get along. They tried to have a positive outlook, and they tried to, like I say, contribute positively to the culture. I'm not hearing that now. A lot of times kids are despairing. Suicide rate is really higher than it has been in a very long time in this country. And I wonder what that's all about. And a lot of negative things are going on. And I wonder, where does this come from? Why are people doing this kind of stuff? And I keep thinking, maybe we have to send a more positive message back out. And one of the ways that the public, you and me and everybody else, gets that done is to stop supporting negative sorts of messages. Simply don't buy it, don't listen to it, don't participate in it, leave it alone. Let it try to die out on its own. I remember when the music was changing, a lot of folks, they moved over from what was being called so-called popular music of the time, and they moved over to country and western. I'm not particularly a country and western fan, but in its defense, what happened was the melodies and the good lyrics, the stories and the kinds of things that people want to share as far as thoughts and ideas about how to live, they moved over into country and western, even more so than they had before. And a lot of folks followed over there to find the messages and the melodies and the pretty songs that they were missing from the current music scene. So I don't know, folks. I think if we want our young ones to grow up with a more positive message in the world, we sort of should. You can't really push a kid to listen to music and make them like it and all that, but somehow we can sort of make it available to them so they can hear it and maybe be affected by it and maybe possibly contribute to something more positive to the culture than what's going on right now. But looking back on all the stuff from Burt Bacharach, what the world needs now is love, sweet love, the look of love. This guy's in love with you. And then there's some fun things like, do you know the way to San Jose? It was kind of whimsical, and I don't know. I think it was Dionne Warwick, wasn't it, who sang that? I don't know how she got all those words, and there was no place to breathe for a singer, for a vocalist, but somehow she got them in there. It was kind of whimsical. I'm trying to think of some of the other things they came up with, but they just had an amazing impact on the culture at the time, right? And another thing, this is just a side note about what the world needs now. That song, I was told online just last week, that song has been recorded over 150 times by that many artists and more. 150 times because it so affected people. They re-recorded that song. It affected them that much. I kind of feel like it would be nice to see some of that happen again, right? Get songs that are so popular and so moving that people want to sing them, they want to play them, and they want to be a part of that kind of a movement in the country and in the culture, right? There was a lot of good music back in the day. If there's some now, please note it down below. I kind of sort of stopped listening to radio a while back. I don't know why, I just fell off. I wasn't hearing anything I enjoyed, and I didn't want to keep living in the past, so I kind of like sort of turned it off. If there's good music being produced right now, share it down below. Put it in the comments below and direct people to places they can find positive messages about the world and relationship and etc. And Let's do something for the children so that they can be happier in life and have a greater expectation for their happiness and what they can accomplish. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about with the passing of Burt Bacharach and all the music from that he produced and the music from previous eras before it turned into a very negative type thing. Um, I know that rock and roll was looked down upon in the beginning. A lot of people didn't like Elvis Presley. They thought he was immoral and all that, and perhaps he was for the day. And that's another thing that disturbs me is that people get used to um, new behavior that is sort of like less positive than the behavior that came in front of it. They get used to it, and it no longer affects them. I notice the language that we use is full of things that I would have considered vulgar once upon a time. And now people just throw them off as though they're just everyday language and they don't mean anything at all except what the person is meaning it to mean. And I suppose that's how language grows, and that's how music grows, and that's how the culture grows, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but I don't like to see it spiral down into something that's negative and that hurts everyone. Just my thought, and I don't know exactly where this particular post is going to, except to say that it'd be nice to have positive music back in the world again, right? And that's why I think a lot of people turn to more traditional types of songs, because there's a yearning in the heart for something that fills the heart and makes people happier to be alive and more hopeful for the future. And that's why they look for it, I think. I could be wrong on that, but that's just my guess. Um, we need things that we can hope for into the future. We can hope to improve our futures in our lives now, etc. And we got to find it somewhere. And if we're not getting it in the culture, then people turn to other things. And not only that, all the negativity makes people more negative to one another in the culture. A lot of people, I'm not going to get into which people I'm referring to, but there are folks out there saying we're more divided now than ever. And I keep thinking, well, that's not my experience. I talk to people all across the socioeconomic, ethnic scope of the country and the culture. And I don't know, we seem to get along. I enjoy the input of folks that come from different backgrounds than my own. I learn a great deal from folks who had different experiences and different outlooks and different philosophies. Just all sorts of things about how to think and feel in the world. I learn about cooking. I learn about events. I learn about relationships in different parts of the culture and why people feel certain ways and why they don't. You know, and even as I say that, I just happened to catch an episode of 60 Minutes yesterday. It was about an African American gentleman who bought a large house. I think it was in Virginia. And it turns out that that house once housed the owners of slaves who had been this gentleman's ancestors, right? And they went looking into that, and people came out and started studying the area and finding the graves of the ancestors of the people who had bought the house and etc. And they're exploring the history of it. And this gentleman said he invites anybody to come out there and study the area and to learn the history of what happened in that place. He says he welcomes it. He says, I think it's necessary. We do need to discuss that stuff. He said, we were never talked about it. We were never told about this when we were growing up. It was just an unspoken thing that children knew. You just don't talk about those kinds of relationships and that history. And I think if we start forgetting our history, it's going to be harmful to us. I think we do need to look at it, embrace it, acknowledge it, admit to when it was wrong, and admit to bringing down those barriers and those divisions between people, because that's what brings folks together. Someone once said, eventually the entire population of the earth is going to be chocolate in skin tone with slightly slanted eyes. And what they were saying was the whole thing is going to mix together sooner or later. I think that is very true. And because of that, looking to the future and to what and who humanity is going to be in the probably not too distant future, I say that gives us more reason to embrace each other now and to recognize what we have in common more than what separates us, because we're all going into the melting pot. At least I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think anyone can stop it, right? Because there's too much communication and too much travel across the globe these days. And I say, take all the good stuff of every culture, take the good things from every culture and benefit from it. For heaven's sakes, let's don't say something didn't happen. Let's say that, let's not divide ourselves and say, you can't have access to this music. You cannot have access to this cuisine. You cannot have access to this history because you're not a member of the group. Let's don't do that. Let's share it. Let's all grow. Let's come together as human beings across the planet. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And I think the music reflects that. At least I'm hoping it will reflect it going into the future. And I hope it's a more positive message than has been of late. And I hope we stop listening to folks who tell us we're divided. Yeah, we got things going on in the world that need to be addressed. And a whole lot of stuff that people complain about, I can agree with their complaints. Sometimes it's just a question of how we go about making changes for the good and for the positive. But other than that, we can agree with the complaints. Now, how do we fix it, right? So, I listened to a lot of Burt Bacharach songs in the last week or so just because of his passing and the fact that it was on the social media a lot. So I listened to a lot of the music, and I agree with the people who said, yeah, it was probably a better message that was out there at that time from that composer and that lyricist. And maybe we could benefit by swinging a little bit back that way, putting out a more positive message and inviting people. They talk about inclusion. Let's all embrace each other. Let's walk arm in arm through this life and this experience, right? I don't think we're as far apart as some folks want us to believe we are. At least I hope we're not. I know there are folks out there who are angry, and there are other folks who sort of wilt and recede away from the conflicts and the controversies. But there should be a lot of us who are willing to step up and say, let's step up and say, let's talk. Let's make this work. Let's get along. Let's figure out how we can address our grievances and come together with some sort of a mutual understanding. That great-great-grandson of slaves owned this plantation now, and he invites you to go out there and look at it. Seemed like a really good guy. Must be really intelligent. Must be doing well in life to afford that plantation area, the houses and the grounds on it. And he's willing to open that up to anyone who wants to come out and walk around and check out the place. And I think that's a good thing. You know, let's all share our histories and our upbringings and our philosophies and our cultures, our music, and our food. I love food. Anyway, folks, thank you for stopping by. Remember, what the world needs now, we all know what it is. So let's start putting our share back in. Thanks for dropping by. I look forward to talking with you next time.